Hello, everyone. Welcome. While we're getting all the technology organized, I'll just say a few words about today's event. This is our Counterpoint panel featuring Nick Anderson and Chip Bach. And I'm Jenny Robb, curator at the Billy Ireland Cartoon Library and Museum. And just to give you an idea of what we'll be doing here, we have a pre-recorded presentation that will last about a half an hour. And then there will be a live Q&A with Nick and Chip. If you're in the Zoom webinar, please use the Q&A feature to ask any questions during the live Q&A. And we'll also try to get to questions from other platforms if we're able. So again, while we're getting everything organized and making sure that, that all the technology is in order, I'll just say a little bit about Counterpoint, which of course you'll be hearing much more about in a moment. I am a subscriber to this digital newsletter. And when I get the newsletter in my inbox, I can be pretty sure that I'm going to see a cartoon, at least one, that I don't agree with. And occasionally one that makes me mad. So some of you, whatever your politics are, might feel the same way during this presentation. For me, it's important for me to make an effort to get outside of my comfort zone, where if you're like me, you tend to curate your news and your commentary to align with your point of view. So one thing that I really appreciate about Counterpoint is that it regularly challenges me to try to understand other perspectives. I'll also say that it rarely changes my mind, but the cartoons do make me think. So I hope now that we have everything working and everyone is on board and ready to go. So as I said before, we'll go ahead and get started with our pre-recorded presentation, and I'll see you all in about a half an hour for the live Q&A.
Welcome to Cartoon Crossroads Columbus, or CXC 2021. Our 4-day celebration of cartoon art couldn't happen without our partner organizations, to whom we are grateful. CXC is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Our annual festival, free to the public, relies on corporate and grant support, as well as individual donations. We are grateful for their support. Visit the Support CXC link on our website to find out how you can help us create meaningful connections between the people who make comics and those who read them. Cartoon Crossroads Columbus acknowledges that the ancient ancestors of the Eastern Woodlands tribes, now referred to as the Adena and Hopewell cultures, inhabited the land we know as Ohio. Their descendants include the living nations of the Shawnee, Miami, Wyandot, Delaware, and Seneca Cayuga. We honor and respect the diverse Indigenous peoples connected to this place where we gather. We hope you enjoy this event. Don't forget to visit our virtual expo at cartooncrossroadscolumbus.org and keep the conversation going in our Discord channel, which you can find at cartooncrossroadscolumbus.org/Discord.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Jenny Robb, head curator of the Billy Ireland Cartoon Library and Museum at The Ohio State University. We house the world's largest collection of cartoon and comics materials, including, of course, editorial cartoons. And I'm joined today by two very talented cartoonists who are involved with Counterpoint, which is a digital newsletter that brings subscribers competing cartoon perspectives on today's biggest news stories. But before I introduce them, I want to just say a few words about editorial or political cartoons. Like many of a certain age, I grew up reading political cartoons in the newspaper that my parents subscribed to. The cartoons were on the editorial page, and so it was clear that the cartoonist was communicating a specific point of view about current events, politicians, or policies. So to me, it's important to know that political cartoonists are generally not trying to present both sides of an issue, nor are they trying to be objective. Instead, they use satire and other tools to express their opinions and, of course, to try and persuade their readers to agree with them. Sometimes they make us laugh, sometimes they make us mad, but the best of them definitely make us think. So For me personally, the best editorial cartoons distort and exaggerate reality while they also allow us to see a truth more clearly. I want to mention one other thing that I think is really important to keep in mind, and that's that in the United States, the First Amendment to the Constitution guarantees us speech and press free from government censorship. So this means that editorial cartoonists here can make fun of political, military, even judicial leaders without fear of being censored or fined or imprisoned or worse. It's important to recognize that this freedom is not currently enjoyed in every country in the world. And also, the First Amendment only applies to censorship by the government. So freedom of speech doesn't apply to private companies or organizations. They can publish what they want to, or they can also choose not to publish things. So with that, I would like to introduce our two panelists who were both born in Ohio, home, of course, of CXC and the Billy Ireland Cartoon Library and Museum. First, Chip Bach hails from Dayton, Ohio, and received his bachelor's degree from the University of Dayton. After working at the Clearwater Sun and the Miami Herald, he landed back in his home state as the staff editorial cartoonist for the Akron Beacon Journal from 1987 until 2009. His cartoons have also appeared worldwide in publications such as the Times of London, the Chicago Tribune, the Washington Post, the New York Times, Time, and Newsweek, and of course now in Counterpoint. He's received many awards for his work, including the National Cartoonist Society's Division Award for Best Editorial Cartooning in 1995 and 1999, and he was a finalist for the coveted Pulitzer Prize in 1997. We also have Nick Anderson, who grew up in Toledo, Ohio, and is a graduate of The Ohio State University. Go Bucks! He joined the Louisville Courier-Journal in 1991 and then moved to the Houston Chronicle in 2006, where he remained as staff editorial cartoonist until 2017. He co-founded Counterpoint in 2019. Among Nick's many awards and distinctions, he won the Pulitzer Prize for editorial cartooning in 2005, and he was the last editorial cartoonist employed by a newspaper in Texas. So now I will hand things over to Nick to get us started.
Thank you, Jenny. It's an honor to be here. I was the cartoonist for the Houston Chronicle, and I thought I was adjusting to the digital world well. I had social media figured out. I was getting high page views. So the online department was saying you're in the top 5 every day for page views. So I thought I was solid, but clearly I was delusional. I lost my job in July of 2017, and spent the next 18 months trying to reinvent myself to adapt to a world in which there were 0 editorial cartooning staff jobs in the second largest state in the country. So when about a year later, Rob Rogers lost his job at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, and I was not given a reason when I was let go. It was very vague. But when Rob was let go, they were very kind of ham-fisted about it. And they told him they wanted him to stop doing so many anti-Trump cartoons. And Rob went public with it, and he became kind of an international story. And trending on Twitter, big Hollywood stars were outraged that this cartoonist was getting fired for doing Trump cartoons. And stories in the Washington Post, the New York Times, ironically, since they don't have an editorial cartoonist, and international publications, CNN. So I saw this as an opportunity. I thought, why there's so much attention on one cartoonist losing his job? Why don't we draw attention to the larger movement of cartoonists losing their jobs? Probably often for political reasons, usually for financial, but I'm sure that there are times when it's also for political reasons. Editors get tired of a lot of complaints, cancellations, and things like that. So I saw an opportunity to try to make a larger point. And so I wrote a column about this and how this is a kind of a bad omen for editorial cartooning in general. And so let me get started on my slideshow here. So I contacted Jake Tapper at CNN, and he connected me with their opinion section, and they were happy to hear about this. And I wrote a column for them and did a cartoon goes along with it. This cartoon says, "Enjoy your new workspace." And as the editorial cartoonist considering his newer workspace. And the headline is Rob Rogers firing is a frightening omen. And I go on and on about how if you're angry about this, you really should be concerned about what's happening to our speech in general if you like editorial cartoons. So this, I don't know how many people read this or whether it made a difference, but it made a difference to one person. So the next day, I get a LinkedIn request from a guy named Vivek Garapalli, and he's in the healthcare sector, and he's a CEO. And I was like, well, that's sort of random, and accepted it. And he messages me right away and said, hey, I saw your column on CNN.com, and I'd like to talk. And I was like, well, okay. And so we found a time to talk a few days later. And it turns out he's a huge consumer of news. He reads everything from far left to far right and everything in between. And he loves current events and he loves politics, but he thinks we're way too siloed. And Americans are way too siloed in their media consumption. And that he also believes that there's really no such thing as unbiased news, which I tend to agree with. There's value judgments that go into any kind of reporting or story placement. So he felt like he really was passionate that he wanted to start a news site and to deliver both sides and everything in between. And that was his main insistence, was that it be balanced not by one point of view, but by multiple point of views, which I think is really a kind of a brilliant strategy. And so we had this nice conversation, and then he said, why don't you come up to the Hamptons next week and we'll discuss this. He goes, buy a ticket to New York and we'll pick you up and we'll talk about it. And I'm like, I go check tickets and they're about $1,000. And I'm like, I'm an unemployed cartoonist. And he connected me with his assistant. And I said, all right, and I looked him up on LinkedIn to double check him. And he seemed legit. And we had a mutual connection. And I contacted him and he said, oh yeah, he's totally legit. I used to work for him. So I went ahead and bought the ticket, and I did get reimbursed. And I flew to New York, and there's a guy holding a sign, with my name on it. And he picks me up and drives me in a very nice car up to the Hamptons. And next thing I know, a week, I'm sitting on his back patio overlooking the ocean in the Hamptons and discussing editorial cartooning and doing something about the current circumstances and creating a media website. And so we had like an hour-long meeting, and then we had I arranged for a couple of other cartoonists, Kevin Gallagher and Matt Davies, who were relatively close, to kind of come in for a second meeting, a brainstorming session. And we had a very productive session, and he was determined to do something with this. He said things like, I warned him that Facebook and Twitter, there's cartoons all over that are just screenshots and they're used kind of as a copyright violation. And it's very difficult to monetize this because it's hard to monetize something if you can't control the supply. They're everywhere. So his response was, well, that's okay. We'll just set aside a few $1,000,000 for a litigation budget. I was like, whoa. So obviously we were dealing with a completely different budget here. And then after the meeting, he flew us back to Manhattan in a helicopter. Which is, here I was barely able to afford my mortgage and getting flown around from the Hamptons to Manhattan. It's a very exciting day. So, we ended up meeting a couple months later to discuss strategy. What were we going to do? And he ended up kind of pulling back from the grand strategy he had. He said, why don't we just test the waters? Why don't we we had talked about Axios as a nice model. Why don't we do a newsletter and just see if it's popular? Let's see what happens. And so he ended up connecting me with a couple of e-commerce Silicon Valley guys who specialize in this kind of thing. So the four of us started Counterpoint. And the vision is that we would get some of the best cartoonists in the country, and we would send out one newsletter a day with the left perspective and the right. And we started out with, friends and family, a few hundred subscribers. And this is the landing page where you go and up here, hit subscribe now, and you just put your email in. And at first it was 100% free. And we started growing. At first, it took us like 3 months, and we were only at about 2,000 subscribers. And then suddenly, it sort of caught fire, Oh, it was after the New York Times fired their cartoonist, and there was this big dust up about a racist cartoon in the international version of the New York Times, and that ended up fueling our fire. And then we ended up putting some ads on Facebook, and we really started growing like crazy. We were growing at 10,000 subscribers a week for a while, and we grew to about 190,000 at one point. Well, the problem with that is when you grow quickly, the email service providers think you're spam because you came out of nowhere. So we ended up getting put in spam folders and Gmail's promotions folder, and so people weren't opening it. So we ended up having to pare our email subscriber list down to about 85,000 now, so that we can keep our open rate good. Because if some people aren't opening it, it doesn't do us any good. So this is what Counterpoint looks like. This is the daily newsletter. Here's a Mike Ramirez cartoon. And so what makes us a little different is not only do we present the cartoon, we also, as you can see below, there's a little paragraph. The cartoonist will write a blurb about what they're thinking. What they're thinking is behind the cartoons, often with a hyperlink to a story that supports their point of view. And then we obviously here's the conservative cartoon, and then here's that day was a Michael Dieter cartoon representing the left point of view. Now these are not necessarily on the same topic. Some days we try to get the cartoons on the same topic. That's not necessarily the case every day. We don't want to force people into this sort of point of view where they have to represent the right or the left on a certain topic. One thing I wanted to avoid, and I was passionate about this, is that if you're a conservative, you don't have to always be the conservative point of view, and same with the left. You have your philosophy, but you don't have to stay in your lane, because then I think it becomes very rote and predictable, kind of like CNN's Crossfire did, where it becomes boring. And I think it's way more interesting if some of our cartoonists break out of their box and criticize their own side sometimes. So that's our daily cartoon. On Mondays, we have a bigger edition where we have a satirical writer write an introduction. He's very good. He's very funny. He prefers to stay anonymous, so he doesn't sign. And then we have 4 cartoons, two from the left and 2 from the right on Mondays. And so let me get to that in a second. So what makes us different is we have original content. You can't see it anywhere else before you see it in Counterpoint. We're paying cartoonists for original content. They can send it to their syndicate 24 hours later, but for 24 hours, it's exclusive to Counterpoint. And we're paying them something that that helps them make a living, unlike what syndicated cartoons do, which is just terrible return on terrible money. You can't live on syndication anymore. So what we're trying to do is build something where cartoonists can make a decent living. We've got 16 cartoonists, and about half of each, half liberal, half conservative, and we try to get everyone to do 1 cartoon a week. We have 12 cartoons a week, so not everyone is on the list every single week, but we try to get a variety so that every day there's something different. So this is another thing that makes it special. This is our Slack channel. This is Chip Bach. You can see here he's posted a couple sketches. We post sketches to each other. You can see over here there's responses to which ones we like. And the really cool thing is, even though we often disagree, we all want Counterpoint to be as great as it can be. So I told Chip I really liked the one on the left, even though I didn't agree with it. I thought it was a really strong cartoon. And then we will sometimes we'll make suggestions with each other, and like it could be stronger if you change the caption or the wording. And to me, it's really nice and collegial and refreshing to be able to work with people who don't agree with you and still have a really great working relationship and a good product. And it's kind of like, I wish as a country we could do that. We could disagree civilly and still be friends and be a little bit more unified. But there's hope. So this is Chip's cartoon. He did this cartoon this week representing the right. He said, I wish General Milley would have called ahead of time. It's about the Afghan drone, the horrible, tragic drone accident. So it's really, I thought that was a really poignant cartoon, Chip, by the way.
Thank you.
And so here's his blurb. then one other thing that makes Counterpoint different is you'll see cartoons that you won't see in your family newspaper. Here's one, the CARES Act, and it's McConnell bailout for business, and here's the Who Cares Act, giving the finger to local government and first responders. You're not going to see that. And I did send this out to my syndicate, but I did censor it because we even had the F word in Counterpoint recently. Our founder really wants it to be edgy. He doesn't want us. In fact, his observation of the first couple months was, "Why are you guys playing it so safe?" Because we're also trained to be wary of editors who are going to kill our cartoons if we're too edgy. So he really pushed us to be edgier and to be outrageous. The only mechanism we have to kill a cartoon, we don't have an editor, is if we take a majority vote. It's if we take a vote and majority rules, and we've had that happen a few times where if something is either over the line or doesn't work very well. And that's only happened a few times. We've let almost everything go. We have kind of a value add. We want to give people more than just cartoons. We have a podcast. It's called Countercast. You can find it on YouTube. And there's Scott Stanis on the right. He hosts our podcast and interviewing James Brolin here on the left. we all thought that Chip looked like James Brolin, but this was a really good podcast. You can see how, a lot of people think editorial cartoonists are kind of like court jesters, silly clowns, but I really enjoyed this because I disagree with Chip on almost everything, and yet there's so much thought that goes into his work, and he's so smart. Don't let it go to your head, Chip. He's so smart. It was really enjoyable to listen to this podcast, and I encourage others to do so. Some other things we do. Here's a cartoon I did after it says the last flight out of Texas, after Texas passed their abortion ban, their virtual abortion ban. So one thing I have here a time lapse video of how that was drawn. So I put these in YouTube, but I make it so that no one can see them unless you have the link. So we add these to the newsletter just as kind of a value added thing for subscribers. So we have two kinds of subscriptions. We have a free subscription. Tuesdays and Thursdays, it's 100% free. And then Monday, Wednesday, Friday, if you want to get it every day, it's $5 a month. So if you want to support Counterpoint, if you want to support the Cartoonist, either thing supports us. Even if you're not paying, if we grow our subscriber list, we can sell ads, which will help us support what we're doing. We have several cartoonists. I'll just run through these real quick. Kevin Gallagher, Chris Britt, Ted Rawl, Darren Bell, Rob Rogers, Pedro Molina, Michael Deatter, and on the right we have Michael Ramirez, Scott Stanis, Rick McKee, Nate Beeler, Mike Lester, Lisa Benson, and Eric Ali, and Gary Varvel, who we just added recently. So we have a really good cross section of talent, some of the best talent in the country, and we'd love to have you as a subscriber. And I'm going to turn this over to Chip now, and to show some of his cartoons, and then we can talk a little bit more about our process. So you want to talk about this one, Chip?
Sure. This is really a cartoon that's maybe a little bit too long, but I thought it was important, and I think it's worth reading through it. It's, do you know of a person who suffered loss of life or limb caused by an abortionist? Unfortunately, that person was only a fetus and can't collect damages. But thanks to the new Texas abortion law, you can. Call now. And our prayers are answered, and a very baffled dog is sitting there as the guy's tapping his iPhone to call in. This was a kind of, I hate to use the word nuance for a cartoon because we like to really hit to the point, but this abortion law in Texas was described by a law professor as very clever. And it is very clever because in order for it to not be overturned by the courts, there are no public officials enforcing it. Instead, common people can sue if they know of someone who has an abortion, or they can sue the abortionist and be awarded $10,000. And so this is to put a squeeze on abortion. I'm not in favor of abortion, but I'm kind of not in favor of. I admire the cleverness of it, I guess, but I think it's kind of a sneaky way to go about it, and so I drew this cartoon.
Great. I think we've got another one here. One on coronavirus.
Yeah, this is the coronavirus and the argument about it being made in China, and then the doctor is saying the problem is this stuff doesn't break as soon as you bring it home anymore. And so I've gotten some criticism. It's racist. I've been told it was racist. I got some email about that. They said, well, how is it racist? Because something is made somewhere and it's had a reputation in the past for breaking. I thought it was kind of funny. So that's just, I suppose it's kind of a silly cartoon. It makes a point. And it makes people laugh and makes people think, as Jenny says. That's what we try to do.
Yeah, this one, I remember when you posted the sketch and it made me laugh out loud. Your sketches often make me laugh out loud. They're very clever. And I also groaned. I'm like, this one is going to get us accusations of being racist, but I'm like, it's okay. This one is, this is within the bounds of fair play, I think. So yeah, we enthusiastically published this one.
That's a good point, Nick. I think humor is really important to cartoons. There used to be a raging debate about it in the field. I haven't heard so much about it lately, but well, I guess there was a period of time where editorial cartoons kind of drifted off into just the joke of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot of criticism about that. Pat Oliphant was a big critic of it. He thought that cartoons were just too funny, and then it became cartoons shouldn't be funny. I firmly believe they should be funny. Humor is how you make the point. You have kind of stick a knife in, drive it home, and show an irony, and it makes people laugh, it makes them mad, and it makes them think. That's what we're supposed to do.
Yeah, people always tell me that they think I'm really funny, and they're surprised when I tell them I never set out to be funny when I started cartoon. I set out to express a point of view and to ridicule the opposing point of view, which is how editorial cartooning works. And in the process, people find it funny because of the absurdity. But I find the creative process works way better if I don't set out to be funny. There was a time when I was younger, I was trying to be funny, and it just was terrible. I would kept falling on my face until I finally realized, yeah, the funny comes as a byproduct of expressing the opinion and ridiculing another point of view, not so much. Just trying to be a joke writer. I wasn't good at it, but it also doesn't work particularly well for editorial cartoons.
Works the same way with me, Nick. I think of an issue, something that really kind of makes you mad, or something that you want to deal with and make a point of. And how can I portray this issue? And then it's in the drawing of the sketches. I know the point I want to get to. And as I draw the sketches and play with it in my mind, the humor falls out. It presents itself. The best ones are the ones where you're not really trying. It comes, it just appears. And then, oh yeah, there's a little twist, and that makes it work.
Agree. Why don't you go through this one as well?
Okay, this is about our president not accepting responsibility. And the first thing says, sneaking away from Bagram in the dark. It was Millie's idea. He actually said that. Surrendered to the Taliban, my predecessor. Well, everything's his predecessor's fault. 11 Marines, 1 soldier, and 1 sailor killed. Advisor's security plan. Ending forever war, the buck stops here. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell. I think that's the way President Biden has handled this whole issue. He's deflected responsibility and has taken credit for ending forever war. And the buck stops here.
I like the device of the great big hand, almost like one of those home hands, to emphasize it. That's a nice visual device.
Thank you.
There's another.
Do I want what?
You want to read this one?
Oh yeah. This is a little preamble to this is that this is a story from the Counterpoint point of view. Had this been the other way around, this would be a national story that would be pounded on and pounded on. This had to do with the California recall, and Larry Elder, a Black radio personality, smart guy, ran a good campaign. And he was in the waning days of the campaign, he's on the trail, and some white woman in a dress on a bicycle rides up with a gorilla mask and this kind of funny wig on, and she throws an egg at him. And it just didn't get much coverage. And so I've got this guy saying, did I just see someone in a gorilla mask throw an egg at a Black politician? And the woman sitting next to him says, no, a Republican politician. And
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think that would have gotten way more coverage if the roles were reversed. So this one, we got a little counterpoint here. This is a cartoon I did last March, and how we were, our governor here in Texas was lifting mask mandates because the vaccine had come out, but most people hadn't gotten it yet. And the governors were lifting mask mandates, and people were celebrating, and I felt like that was premature to celebrate before we had really crossed the finish line. And unfortunately, I think that's borne out to be true. So we didn't necessarily draw these on the same day, but this is the kind of thing you can get where two cartoons on the same topic. So here's Chip's take,
well,
which I thought was a really good one, by the way.
there's some question. I mean, there's a big question as to whether Biden, as president, has a constitutional authority to order people to get jabs in the arm.
Mm-hmm.
As good a thing as that may be, and it is. And so I just drew this little cartoon. And Biden also, one of the things I'm interested in focusing on is the way he campaigned on being, he holds a pen in his hand all the time, and he wants to bring us together. I'm going to be the guy to bring us together. I'm going to be the grown-up. And he's done everything other than bring people together. He's been incredibly divisive. And when I saw him give this speech about the virus last week, I guess it was, I just couldn't believe the way he's attacking the people who don't get the virus shot. They should get the shot, but they have various reasons. I know a medical professional who is, I don't know if she's going to make it. She's really sick. She didn't get the virus shot for whatever her own reasons were. Anyway, so back to Biden abusing the Constitution. I lost my patience. Here, blow your nose with the Constitution.
And then we got a climate change attack. Aren't you terrified about all the debt Biden is leaving for future generations? The Republican says, and climate change is blazing in the background. And this is, I did because of all the hurricanes that are getting stronger. The one that hit Louisiana, they say, was much stronger because of the temperature of the water in the Gulf. It grew in strength much more quickly. And then, of course, the wildfires that we have all over the West are terrifying. Basically, everything that climate scientists have been telling us would happen for the last 30 years is now happening, and it's only going to get worse. And as much as I've generally, I used to be very concerned about deficit spending. I was more moderate or even conservative, and I've gotten less so recently. I won't take up too much time and get all into that, but that's part of my thinking here. And then Chip's got it's a really good image. Climate change is our greatest threat. You want to talk about that one, Chip?
Well, this is as much rip at our woke military as it is about the climate change issue. I would take issue with the things you just said about climate change, but prefer to do it in the cartoon. Climate change is real.
Right.
There's always been climate change. My problem with climate change is that where I live right now in northern Ohio, there was a 1 mile thick sheet of ice, and something caused it to melt before there were ever any SUVs. it's just the climate changes. I don't question that there's human influence on climate change and that it's happening, but this was, as I said, more directed at General Milley and the woke attitudes of our military, and that's all I have to say about that.
Well, you're 100% wrong.
Nick, you ignorant slut.
So part of the reason, we had exchanged messages several months ago, and you seemed very enthusiastic about what we're doing with Counterpoint and I think going against cancel culture, the general culture that we have of silencing each other. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I was thrilled when I saw what Counterpoint was doing. For one thing, by and large, newsrooms, editorial pages in the United States are liberal. There are some really great conservative ones, but not a lot. And editorial cartoonists tend to be liberal. I was, I've always actually considered myself a liberal, but more in the libertarian sense. I'm interested in individual liberty and freedom. And to me, I see growing government influence as the biggest problem. And government cooperation with large corporations, I see as a big problem. So I was glad to see a forum where there could be pushback against the general modern day view of liberalism in the press as expressed by cartoonists. And I just thought it was a really great idea and really embrace it.
So I was very concerned during the election, the 2020 election, because we're so polarized. I was worried about our business model, especially because we're asking people to pay for it. And we have about 85,000 free subscribers and about 1,500 who pay. And I wondered if we would get more people to pay if we weren't giving them both sides, because it seems like most people today don't want to see both sides. They really go out of their way to set up their social media so that it's kind of an echo chamber. So we tested the theory. We set up a reader poll and asked people to tell us, would you rather see just cartoons that represent your side? And I fully expected for people to overwhelmingly say that they really are sick of seeing the other side. And we had a few complaints here and there about cancellations because of cartoons that people didn't like. But I was shocked and heartened by the percentage of people, around 90%, who wanted the current format. They want to see the other point of view. They like it in this context. They like seeing it in a kind of a quick visual take where you don't have to go read through a whole column. You might even be entertained and amused. And overwhelmingly, people said, keep the current format. I really enjoy it. I like it. Don't change it. And it forces people to engage with the other point of view in a way that's maybe not too painful most of the time. Although sometimes it is. Sometimes I read Slack and I see a sketch and I'm like, that makes me so mad. But that's what it's supposed to do. So I'm encouraged the cartoonists to go ahead with it. That's what it's all about. And so I guess that's a good place to wrap it up.
Well, Nick, that's encouraging that readers like seeing both sides, because it goes back to what you were talking about earlier when we review each other's cartoons. I love seeing both sides, and I can see a cartoon I completely disagree with and appreciate it as a great cartoon and laugh and really enjoy it. And I was fortunate enough that I had an editor who was that way, Mike Douglas. I worked at a liberal paper and he reviewed all. I could count on him to choose a cartoon that was the best, even though I knew he didn't agree with it.
So one thing I'd like to insert is I'd like to eventually get back to a free publication, because I think we're much stronger if we're giving it away and ad supported. We're not big enough to be ad supported yet. So even if people just take it for free, just getting into our circulation helps us. I mean, obviously $5 a month helps us a ton, but just becoming a subscriber, a free subscriber, helps us a lot, helps us grow. And eventually we'd like to get back to an ad supported free publication.
who's going to feed my polo ponies? that was a that was a
I
comment.
got a guess at the Lamborghini, so please pay for Counterpoint.
Great. Thank you very much, Nick and Chip. And now we'll be taking questions from our audience.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Nick and Chip, if you can turn your camera on.
Hello.
Hello.
Wonderful. So I really am fascinated by your dynamic and the fact that it's pretty clear the two of you don't agree politically on a lot of things, but still seem to have a really great working relationship and maybe even friendship. I don't know. Would you guys go out and have dinner together and talk politics or no?
Absolutely.
No
Maybe-
way.
So we've got a few questions already. I'm going to start with those, and we'll see. We've got about maybe 10 or 15 minutes for questions. The first question is, how are the cartoonists selected, and do you accept submissions for new or emerging cartoonists?
Basically, we know all the players in the business, and we just have invited some to join us. We try to keep it to get from getting too large. If we have too many people to balance, then the scheduling becomes very difficult. And we also want kind of a regular rotation of people so that our readers get to know the voices. Yes, we would certainly entertain submissions. I'm embarrassed that I can't remember the main email, so I'll just give you mine. andrewtoon@gmail.com is my personal one. I hope I don't get too many submissions, but yeah, you can send me submissions.
Great. Another question, cartoonists often say that one of their goals or their main purpose is to speak truth to power. And I'm wondering how you handle it when the party that you might be more aligned with in terms of your own point of view is actually in power.
That's a good question. What, Chip, you want to take that one first?
Sure. I try to be an equal opportunity offender, but if I go back and look at my cartoons, in all honesty, I probably don't have as many hard-hitting cartoons against Republican presidents as I do Democratic presidents, and I definitely accuse the other side of being the same way. I think, though, that it's important to take on somebody you support. Say I support it. I'm having trouble here because I'm thinking about our last president, Donald Trump, who was a complicated figure, and he's not somebody I really liked in the primaries. I hated him, in fact, but when it came down to him and Hillary Clinton, I kind of supported him, I guess. And the issues came to be really hating people that supported him came through a lot. And so I did Trump cartoons. Trump's not really a guy, as I say, I supported, but I did a lot more cartoons on the other guy, as Obama, as Biden would say.
When I was at newspapers, there was more expectation to do that. I did it a lot earlier in my career. I was very tough on Clinton, both for the sexual scandals and also on policy. I thought he could be craven, but as I've moved on through my career, I've done it less. I did criticize Obama some when he violated what I thought my principles were, but I felt like our media environment had changed, and that the Fox News's, Rush Limbaugh's of the world were kind of had a take no prisoners approach. And I felt like trying to be even-handed is almost like unilateral disarmament against a very, very effective opposition. So I became more willing to kind of just fight from one point of view. Recently, I was critical of Biden with the Afghanistan pullout, at least how the withdrawal was carried out for the first couple of days. But for the most part, I have been more inclined to just fire from one side, partly because I'm no longer with a newspaper, so I don't feel that obligation, and partly because of the changing newspaper environment.
Great. Another question. What efforts are made to make sure the perspectives on Counterpoint don't just balance out left wing and right wing, but also spread out across racial, gender, and class perspectives?
So that's a tough one. And we did have that discussion because so many editorial cartoonists are middle-aged or older white males. So it gets tough. We have Lisa Benson, and we have Darren Bell, because we wanted to have at least some diversity, but it's really pretty tough given the field to do that. So basically, what the approach we take is let everyone draw what they feel and they think, and let the chips fall where they may. There was some pressure from some cartoonists on other cartoonists at Counterpoint to toe the line, pro-Trump line more. And we have several cartoonists who are and they're never Trumpers. And like I said, I just don't want to get into this perfect left-right balance every day which eliminates thinking. So everyone is free to just express what they think, no matter what it is. And I think that we should cultivate that. Chip, do you have any thoughts?
Well, yeah, I really like the counterpoint aspect of this, having one side and the other side in a cartoon on the same subject when it works out that way. Sometimes it doesn't. As you mentioned, we have a lot of never Trumpers on the other side. And so you'll have on a day you kind of the same, not the same idea, but the same point of view on both sides of the never Trumper and the anti-Trumper cartoonist. But as far as race, sex, and other things, it's difficult. It's not a binary world, and people see things in a lot of different ways, and so that comes through that's the opposite of having a strict counterpoint, but I think it balances out pretty well.
So this is more of a technical question. Or business question, I guess. Have you thought of scaling up from a newsletter to a larger publication that could support advertising, either virtual or print, and expand to include articles and other pieces, something like a newspaper? I don't know.
Yeah, that was kind of my long-term dream, to scale it up into more forms of opinion. But right now, and making what we have grow. We do have ads occasionally, not very often. We're kind of at this weird size. We have 85,000. We're able to get some ad revenue here and there, and I'm trying to get back into the flow of that to get some ad revenue generated. We've got some people right now that want to advertise with us. The difficulty is the amount of money versus the amount of time it takes me to make sure the ads are placed is not always a great cost benefit. So I think, but what we're trying to do is demonstrate that we can do it, so that I can go to our founder and say, look, if we just grow more, then we can cover all our costs. I think we need to grow in size about threefold to start breaking even. And we can do that. We need to start marketing again.
So another suggestion, perhaps, any thoughts of annual collections with print on demand? It could be an economical thing to do.
We did do a merch store last Christmas. We got some traction from it. Once again, it became sort of a lot of work for not as much money. And also, we discussed doing a Patreon page if people want to support us more than $5 a month. Again, it's kind of a bandwidth issue. We are losing our e-commerce partners right now, and I'm kind of taking over some of what they did, and I'm kind of looking for other people to help out. So we're kind of in a weird space right now where I just started a new job, and I'm trying to take on some of the role from Counterpoint and balance the new job. And so I think good things will start happening once I've been in this new job for 2 weeks. Once I get settled in there, then I can start doing a little bit more on Counterpoint and make some of these things happen.
Well, congratulations on your new job. I understand you'll actually be doing some cartoons for the new job. Do you want to tell us where you're working?
Sure. I was just hired as managing editor for RA News, or Reform Austin News, here in Texas. It is a small publication focusing on Texas politics. And so they've kind of given me the opportunity to do everything I like to do, which is writing editorial cartoons. And for the first time, I'm getting to manage people. We have a small staff of writers, so and kind of manage the direction of the publication. So it's a really exciting opportunity. I'm having a lot of fun with it so far. And they also really like Counterpoint, so I may try to find a way to integrate the two somehow, or have them help with the marketing end of things, because they're actually really good at that. So it's just been a great opportunity.
Great. So this next question picks up on something that Chip mentioned, and that's reader response, sometimes referred to as hate mail or fan mail, I guess, depending on what it is. So I'm just curious if both of you could maybe talk a little bit more about some of the responses that you get, either to Counterpoint in general or individually to your cartoons.
Chip?
Well, I don't get as many responses as I used to get when I worked for a newspaper, just because there's not as much circulation. Although on the internet, cartoon can take off, go viral, and then the hordes come down on you, and at some point you just have to stop answering them. But the arguments are endless. That's one thing that never happened in newspapers. You get plenty of letters to the editor, and it was kind of fun. But the response on the internet sometimes isn't so much fun. It can get kind of nasty.
Have you ever had a reader change your mind and make you think differently about a cartoon you've done?
That's an interesting question, and I have. This was like a long time ago, the first time it happened. I was at the 2000 Democratic Convention in Los Angeles, and Al Gore was going to give his acceptance speech. And at the same time, a Russian submarine sank, and it was a military submarine, and everybody in the submarine perished, and they were banging on the hull of the submarine to try to send messages out when they're being rescued. And so I thought it was very clever to incorporate the two ideas into one cartoon, that Gore was banging out his acceptance speech. Only I had a picture of a submarine and it said Democrats and bang, bang, bang on the hull. And it was pretty funny. You can't see the picture of it, but I thought it was funny. A lot of people did, but I got a lot of criticism because a lot of people actually died, and that was a real thing. It wasn't just a cartoon fantasy. And I used those people's deaths to make kind of a lighthearted joke about Al Gore. So yeah, in that case, I have since then been more careful about that kind of cartoon.
Thank you, Chip. Nick?
I can't think of any specific instances like Chip's. I think that it probably has happened, and that people have maybe I did something a little similar to that maybe wasn't in great taste, and maybe shame is a much better motivator than usually when I do a cartoon, I've thought it through pretty well, and I've researched it, and it's very unlikely that I will change my mind, at least in response to a reaction. I really try to feel like I'm on solid ground when I say something, and make sure it's well researched so I can defend it. But if I'm being honest, I'm sure there have been times when I was pressed for time and went off half cocked and said something that, the next day I thought maybe I didn't think that through, but I can't think of any specific instances.
Great. Well, we're at 1:55, and we do have to finish a few minutes before 2 so that they can switch to the next event. So I just want to take this opportunity to say thank you very much, Nick and Chip, and look forward to seeing. Oh, sorry. And I recall now that that Nick wanted to say a few words at the end here. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, I just have an announcement for the AAEC, Association of American Editorial Cartoonists. If you're interested in seeing more cartoonists talk about political cartooning and their work, check out next weekend's AAEC Editorial Cartoon Festival online, October 8th and 9th. The Pulitzer Prize finalists will be discussing this year's controversial decision to not award a Pulitzer, and Keith Knight will be talking about season 2 of Woke and more. So you can just go to editorialcartoonist.com to register for free.
Yeah, looks like some really great programming. I'm looking forward to that. So again, thank you very much, Nick and Chip, and we'll see you all next time.
Thank you. See you.
Thanks, Jen.